Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. Today I'm working in World of Flowers by Johanna Basford and I'll be starting on this page here. I like this because it's got so many different little shelves that you can easily do independently. You don't have to do them all at once. So it makes it easier just to complete one or two little shelves when you're sort of short of time. I'll be using my Polychromos pencils today and I'm going to be continuing on using my absolute favorite color palette, which is basically the bottom layer of the 120 set of the Polychromos. So it's got 3 layers and the bottom one is just all those beautiful earthy colors. So I'm going to be using the Naples yellows, all those gorgeous muted reds and terracottas, as well as 3 greens. So the only ones you need from the middle tray is your earth green, your permanent green olive, as well as the chrome oxide green. But right now we're starting out with our Naples yellow and then we're going to go into our ochres. So let's get started. Now I'm doing this whole thing in real time today. It's such a shortish video, so there's not many huge big areas that's going to need to be done like that. They're not going to take too long at least, so I'll do it all in real time and you can follow along. So as you can see for the backgrounds, I'm going in with just this nice warm Naples yellow and now the Naples ochre. It's just, I find it so warm and inviting and I really love these colors. And I just love getting you guys excited about these colors because I have a feeling they're the ones that often get left out of the color palettes. A lot of people would go, straight for the nice bright yellows and everything from the top tray, and the bottom tray kind of gets forgotten about a little bit. So I'm so excited that I can get you guys excited about using these pencils. So I'll probably end up having all of these little shelves sort of match each other. I'm not going to do the same color on absolutely all of them, but I want it all to sort of be tied together with this sort of nice warm and inviting theme. So as I said, I'm doing the Naples yellows and ochres for this one, and I'll do the little square next to it afterwards with the little tools, and I'll probably be using the terracottas I think with that, which I'm going to also be using on some of the pots in this picture. So it's all going to tie together and make it nice and all harmonious really. So with the light yellow ochre, I'm just gonna at the moment focus on the areas just down the bottom and just sort of behind all the plants where I want it a little bit darker. I might add a little bit more in sort of towards the end of the picture, just depending on what I feel like it needs to. But at the moment I'm just going in wherever I'm thinking there's going to be a little bit of shading, and we're going to add in a little bit more as well after that, but this is what I'm doing at the moment. I'm going to be using the burnt sienna for my shadows. I just feel like it ties in really nicely with the yellows and the ochres that we got, and it just makes it all float together, and it's not super harsh or anything like that. So it just still gives it that sort of warm glow that I'm after. So I'm going to get started on these little pots. So I'm starting out with a Pompeian red, and I'm going to do all these pots in different shades of the muted reds and the terracottas. I'm just kind of thinking that they're probably terracotta pots or something like that, so I'm thinking they'll be in those red tones. So I'm just starting with this lighter layer, and I'm going to go in a bit darker with the burnt carmine around the edges. So I'm just going to use the base red to blend out a little bit and have it on the highlight, and then I'm going to go in with the burnt umber and just use that for the shaded areas. Now these little leaves are rather small, so I'm just going to use the earth green yellowish and the permanent green olive for these ones, and I'll leave the darker ones for the larger leaves a bit further up. So this large pot in the center, I'm going to be using my terracotta, my sanguine, and the burnt ochre, and I'll also be using the burnt umber for the shadows. Now I do find sometimes the terracotta pots have got these little tiny lines in them, So I'm just going back and forth, just sideways. I'm not doing the little circles that I sometimes do, just to get those little lines and make it look like it's a little bit of a rounded shape. So as I said, the burnt umber just really lends itself well as a shader for these kind of colors that I'm using today. It just blends in with them really well without giving that really harsh sort of dark line that you would if you're using black or like one of the really dark grays. It's just got that little bit of a warmer property compared to the blacks. So I'm just going to start out adding a light layer of the earth green yellowish to the 3 larger leaves, and then I'm going to go in and add in the shading, and I want to make it look like these leaves sort of curve around a little bit. So I'll be doing the darker shadows around the edges and around where the sort of the stem starts as well, so make it look like it's going up and then curving back around. So I'm just going to use the permanent green olive now just to start mapping out my darker areas and blending it slightly into the earth green yellowish, but I still want a little bit of a definition between the 2 colors, as I want that earth green yellowish as the highlight. got my chrome oxide green out now, and I'm going to be using this for the darkest areas on these leaves and really make it look like they're curving around. Now try not to go in too harsh and too hard at the start. Just sort of go in lightly and build up your layers until you have the amount of shading that you want. So I'm also going in a little bit on these little lines that are here. I just want it to look like there's a little bit of a vein there, and that it even curves in a little bit where that vein is. Now these little flowers on the top are teeny tiny, so I'm not going to go too complicated here. So I'm just going to go in with the Venetian red, and then I'll probably use the India red and literally just add in those lines to separate each petal, and I'll just use that red for that, so it looks like it's a little bit of a shadow, a little bit of a darker area. Now, because I didn't add any shadows on the back wall from these flowers, I'm just going to go ahead and do that now using the burnt sienna. Again, just because it works out really well with the Naples yellow background, and it blends in really well without being too harsh. So for this little last pot, I'm going to use the India red and the cinnamon. Now, if you have one of the older sets of Polychromos, the cinnamon, I'm pretty certain is the same as the, I think it was called Dark Flesh. So when you see me taking out the cinnamon one, just look at the number rather than the name of the pencil. So I've just ended up grabbing my Venetian red just for that little top edge that's a little bit lighter. I didn't want it as dark as the India red there, so I'm just using that on the edges to make it look a little bit rounded, and I'll just use it to blend a little bit with over the top of the India red. Now again, this little plant here is just teeny tiny. There's not much you can do. I'm going to be using all of my greens, all the 3 that I've got out, but I'm not going to go too complicated. I'm just going to add the shadows down the bottom of each leaf and then just around the bottom of the stem. I want to add in a little bit more shadows behind these plants. I'm going in with my burnt sienna again, adding in the shadows from the leaves and the stems onto the wall behind, as well as that sort of little curly part on the stems as well. I just want to make it look like it's shining onto the wall behind it. So I'm just going over a few of these areas again, just darkening up the shadows a little bit with the burnt umber, and then I might add a little bit more of the darker, maybe the ochres around the edges of the background, just to darken out the sort of very outline a little bit more. just finishing out this little outline, just darken it up a little bit. I'm not sure how well it shows up, but it does definitely show up for me as I see it. So, but you'll probably see it if you're following along as well. And then I reckon we're done, and I'm going to start on to the next little square. So I'll just do these little tools on the side. I'm going to use the terracotta as the main colour of the background. So just like I did with the large middle pot, I'm going to be using the sanguine as a slightly darker at my mid-tone here, and I'm just going to work it in a little bit from starting out from each edge and working my way in a little bit, but having the lighter areas in the center. However, in between on these little tools, in between those little forks, I'll go in and I'll go a little bit darker and add some more shadows there. And just to darken up just those outlines a little bit more, I'm going to go in with my burnt ochre and just go around the edges and where I want the shadows to be. Now I'm just going to go over with a very light layer of the light yellow ochre just to tighten a little bit more with the little shelf right next to it. I'm going in very, very light. You can hardly see it on camera, I think, but I can see it just that little bit. It just changed it up and just give it a little bit more warmth. So I'm thinking that these little handles are wooden, so I'm going to go in with my raw umber to start with, and then add in a little bit more shadows. So I'm thinking that these little lines, I think they might be like little carvings or something like that. So I'll just try to ensure that it looks like they've been carved in a little bit further, and I'll add a little bit more shadings to those. I'm going to be using my Van Dyke Brown for the shadings for this, so I'll add it to the outer areas of these little lines, and then I'm going to be adding it to like the outline of the whole handle as well, just to make it look like it's been carved all nice and round. So I'm just going back in with the raw umber just to blend it all together, and then we're going to get started on the sort of the metal part of this. So I'm going to start with my warm grade 2, and you're going to need number 3, 4 and I think 5, as well as I'm building up and making it look rounder and adding some shadings. Now, because we got this little line down the center here, I'm pretty certain that it's got a little bit of a fold there. I know that's what my little spades do. I know there's a proper gardening name for these, but I have no idea. They're just like a little spade, or like a little thing that you use to dig with when you plant your plants. Goodness me. Anyway, because it's got this little line down the center, I'm going to make it so that it's a little bit darker on one side, and then that the light's hitting a little bit more on the other side. Now, just because I'm sure these little tools have been out digging in the dirt, I'm going to add in just a little bit of raw umber as well as a little bit of the earth green yellowish. I'm going in super light. It's just like a hint of colour over the top just to give this little illusion that might be a little bit of dirt stuck onto it. Now this is totally optional, but I'm going to go in with my Sakura Gelly Roll just on the lighter side of these tools, and I'm just going to just tone down the dark outline just that little bit on the highlighted side. So I'm going to do this on this side and on all these little forks that come down as well, but I'm going to leave the darker, the shaded side normally black the way it is at the moment, and just have it black. just adding a little bit more burnt ochre just to these little outer edges of the background, and then we are finished. And there you go. This is our first two little shelves all done. I really enjoyed doing these and getting back to my nice warm earthy colour palette. I hope you enjoyed following along and maybe learned some new things about some shadings and what colours we can use instead of just using the regular old black. So I wish you all a colourful day, and I will see you again next time.